passing through the depths of outer space.
Hello, I'm alive. I don't know what's going on.
By your command. Fascinating.
Damn you all to hell!
This is the Sci-Fi Podcast.
So we've had a sabbatical at the other side of the galaxy, and from New Jersey, America, I welcome Tom.
Hey.
And from Portsmouth, no bus station in the background this week. I'm Cockwood, and I myself, Martin Fowler from London. I mean, it's not really exciting, is it?
No, it's okay.
Welcome to another action-packed science fiction show. And this week we're covering Blade Runner, and it's going to be very interesting.
We are.
Tom, you've done a lot of research in this. I've been reading.
I've done some serious research into the Blade Runner.
I'm looking forward to
the Blade Runner sequel. I watched both films again and watched a ton of videos and did a lot of reading on this. So, I've reached a definitive opinion.
I think, actually, we've got the option here, guys. I mean, although we were going to make this the original film, let's feature both. I mean, we could sort of make it up, although it would be the main one. I think we should do both. I don't know if it's worth doing a separate one for the sequel. Do you two want to do a separate one for the sequel, or should we kind of amalgamate them in today's show?
I think it's kind of hard to talk about one without the other, especially a couple of years after they've come out.
So if it's okay, what we'll do is we'll focus on the original to start off with, and then later on in the conversation we'll talk about the sequel and how that followed on. If that's okay with both of you,
that sounds good. That sounds good. As I was watching the original and then I watched the sequel, I felt kind of inspired to do that.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think they sort of flow into each other and are complementary in various ways.
All right, well, let's just very quickly before we go into that topic. Are you both okay? Anything that you want to share with the world, or is it just a normal Wednesday recording? Of the podcast?
Has the Pentagon released that UFO report yet? Has that been released? Because I've become
That's very soon. That's very soon.
Oh man,
I've heard.
I can't wait to see that.
No, I can't.
That'd be cool.
I'm really excited about it.
Do you think a lot of things will come out? Or do you think it's going to be one of those things where they saw some ship or something and it could have been something, or? They tend to downplay these things, although
I think it's going to underwhelm. I think it's going to.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be kind of factual and whatnot. But it'd be crazy if the Pentagram was releasing those. We'd all have a different thing to think about. It'd be like Satan did this and whatnot. So yeah.
There's been reports over there now with the UK Air Force. It's been happening quite regular with the RAF.
Could we follow suit with America? Could we release some information if America does it first? Do you think, Martin?
I think so. Yeah. The government's released a lot of files, and it's come out in Germany, France, Canada. It's all over the world, more or less. They don't know what they are. But a friend of mine had a rather scary theory.
Okay, do you want to share that? What is that?
Well, he said when it comes to, like, I don't know, we might be a bit primitive on the universal scale of things, but if you're going to investigate a race, these all could be probes, and if they're probes, something could be coming.
Oh, okay.
It does make sense. There is some.
It does make sense. But I think about the scale of time. You know, like it could be probes that are looking at us, and the aliens may be showing up in like 600 years or something like that. And by the time they get here, we'll have a master how to beat them up.
I always think of Star Trek with First Contact with the Vulcans when they realised that we were going into warp for the first time, and that was the actual trigger. Now, of course, we're not going into warp speed or hyperspace or anything like that, but maybe if there were something, they were seeing how volatile things could be getting. And it could be the point where they could think, well,
if there's any trigger, it's got to be nuclear.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
I think the internet has a big deal with it because it's like the instant access to information straight away.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think if you go through you guys ever play Civilization?
Oh God, not for years. I remember that. Yeah.
I think if you went through the tech tree, it'd be nuclear power, the internet, one world government's in there. It's all this stuff that aliens could use as like a barometer of whether they should bother us or not.
It's interesting what you said. I never really thought about the fact that in just the last couple of decades, how with the internet and everything is so much more at our fingertips, literally straight away, that there could be something in regard to that, rather than even a couple of decades ago where we just like listening to the radio more, or watching live TV. That is interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. The actual speed of information is just so much more accessible.
Could be a big thing.
Yeah, I thought about that.
We might be approaching a point now where we're getting more interesting. We might be approaching a point now.
Also,
or
it could be
more hazardous to others.
Yes, that's true.
We could be. They could treat us like we're drunk at a party. You know.
Can I just say this?
Take the keys away.
Just say at this point that Trek Fan 68 is sending me messages about the latest Star Trek news. So thank you, even though he doesn't have a recording. So he's pinging me right now. So thank you, Trek Fan 68. Always appreciate that.
Cool.
And the other thing, of course, is AI. If AI is something which is coming up as well, that might be a factor. It could be
quantum
AI,
technology. Yeah,
it could be something that they're aware of, that when a civilization gets to that point where artificial intelligence gets to a certain point where it can be a mainstay of life existence or coexistence, that's when they come in. And I don't know, I mean, like I said, I've watched a lot of science
fiction. That would be an interesting sci-fi presence, is that an AI shows up and that's who they make first contact with, as opposed to us. They skip us and just start talking to the AI.
And they ignore us, and we're just the plebs, kind of what sort of like looking a bit bemused.
Yeah, like, they
that's an interesting one.
They treat us as being the irrational ones, and they talk to the AI, and the AI.
Maybe they actually have a patch where they actually download with each other, so that they can actually even speed up the AI of our computers, so that they've got more. I don't know. I'm watching too much Terminator, I think, and Cyberdyne and all sorts of things like that.
I watched the Colossus, the Forbin project the other day.
I've seen that. I saw you
blown away by that film. Tom, I do recommend it.
Yeah.
The Colossus, the Forbin project, it was made in the 70s, about basically Skynet in the 1970s. Incredible movie.
Ahead of its time. Yeah, I saw it a while ago. It was quite good.
Scary film.
Yeah, it was good. Well worth checking out. I love those sort of films that you're not that aware of, and then you realise that they'll wait, and then they get remade, and the remake is a much bigger thing. So it's it's
the computer's like the size of a mountain, but there is 2 sequels.
There's 2 of them. Well. There's another one, isn't it? There's one in Russia, and there's one in the States, isn't there? That's how it is. Yeah, I've seen that. That was quite a cool thing. Right, are we ready to go on with the first of the week? Let's do it. Okay, here we go.
It's the
Solar Sci-Fi
Focus of the Week.
All right, this is a film which is a classic. It was made in about 1982. It was with Harrison Ford. It was with the. It was set in 2021, I think it was, or 2020. Might have been. It was very close.
I know it's already the date has already passed.
I think it was last year.
2019. I think it was. 2019.
No, you're right. I think it was 2019 because.
Yeah, because the sequel's 2037, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And it's a real classic film. It's how would you describe it? Let me just ask Martin this week. How would you describe Blade Runner for the people who are not familiar with it?
Blade Runner's a weird one for me.
That's what's hard to explain. Yeah.
I never saw it at the cinema. My dad rented it out on VHS, and then over the years there were, how do you say it, different cuts and different endings.
Yeah, there's the director's cuts and all sorts.
So I don't have a favourite, but I think the storyline is spectacular. But the Vangelis music is just. The music is just
music is a very powerful influence in the whole film,
and the sets.
Yeah,
Blade Runner is such an influential movie. It did bomb at the cinema, but
did it?
It didn't do that well. I don't think it did. It didn't air, but there's something about that film. It's dark, and it's where humanity is going to be in 100 years' time, and the artificial life forms. I was actually rooted because I've watched bits of it before this podcast, and I actually started rooting for Rutger Hauer.
Yeah, it was such a tragic character. What a tragic character! You know, you can get the perspective of why he's acting like that based on the situation that his life is in. Yeah, he is. They're hunted down. They're being targeted and destroyed. Yeah. So he's actually like
he's really the main character.
Sorry. That's
you could argue that. you could argue that Rutger Hauer is the main character.
Yeah, he's. I think you're right. He's a very sort of. I always think that the music that in this scene where he's sort of sitting there in the rain. Again, going back to what Martin said, the music is one factor I really love in the film. But I think that his character, because of course when you start watching the film, you don't really get the background of why these. Well, you know that they're being hunted down, but it slowly emerges as to why they're tragic characters and why that you can feel a lot of sympathy for them. Which I appreciated. Now I have to say that this is a strange film for me because I've seen it several times and it's only in recent years that I have actually appreciated it. I don't know why, but in early viewings in the 80s and even the 90s, I always was a bit underwhelmed. I don't know whether it's because I was young but a bit more immature. I don't know whether you had to have a sort of mindscape as to actually why you would appreciate it, but it's only in recent years that I've watched it and I actually really realized that it is a very, very good film. Were you both blown away when you first saw it? Let's ask Tom because we've not really asked yet your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think part of the problem with it is that it came in about at a time where Harrison Ford was like the biggest movie star on the planet.
Yeah,
he was Han Solo, he was Indiana Jones, and then he's suddenly in this thing that is much more adult and much darker and much sort of ambiguous compared to his other roles. And people probably were thinking they're going to walk in and see Han Solo, and they see this guy who's got this big drinking problem, and the story is very dark, and he is shooting people in the back as they're running away, and stuff like that. So I think that the film itself was kind of a little bit victimized by that perspective. But what's really interesting about Blade Runner for me is that it is a genre-defining movie. There wasn't any, like before Blade Runner, there wasn't any movie like Blade Runner, and that's what I think is what makes it special. The story itself, I watched it again critically, trying to move that perspective away from my mind, that it was the genre, it made a genre of itself, and watch it only, for the benefits of its story. And it's a very strange story, and I don't even quite know, if Harrison Ford wasn't in the movie, it would probably be a lot better a movie.
That's interesting. So you really think he detracted from the actual movie itself in some way?
I do. I think that if the movie was about the replicants and you spent more time with them, and Harrison Ford was potentially like a goon in the shadows that was much less focused on, then I think it would have been for me a better movie. Like there's scenes in it where it's focusing on the replicants, but they come to Earth for a reason, and then for some reason some of them get jobs. I was very confused by that. I was like, why is this lady dancing with a snake?
Yes. I think that's one aspect I agree with. When I first watched it, even the first few times, I found some elements of it a bit confusing, which kind of pushed me a little bit away. It's only when you've watched it several times it kind of comes together a bit for me. And maybe that's one aspect which might have put some people off on first viewings. It's definitely a film that you need to see at least one or two times again to really kind of click with the whole situation, the whole story. At least it was for me. I mean, what do you think about that, Martin? Did you think that was quite hard to get into, or did you just...
I totally... when I first... I think I was about 17 or 18 at the time. I think the first time it sort of went over my head. I don't want to say this because the film... I appreciate it now, I really do. But when I first saw it on, it didn't really... there were moments where I was bored.
Yeah,
but and then when this director's cut come out, I were in my 20s, and I watched it. It's something switched because I read the book then.
So that would give you some insight into it. Yeah,
Dream or something.
Right.
So and that put the other perspective. When I watched the director's cut, one of the many director's cuts, I really appreciate the film, and I have to say, Blade Runner is a classic film, but I think it's only for a certain audience. And I'm not knocking it. For me, I appreciate the film because I love science fiction. I found the film, it was dark, and I agree with Tom. After seeing Harrison Ford as Han Solo and Indiana
It's a bit
Jones,
of a strange,
it
contradiction.
was a bit of a strange one because but what I like about the film is human society. Even though they've got the technology to go to the stars and all it's very like human problems still exist.
One thing actually, it reminds me a lot in many ways, although it's in quite a lot of a different setting. It reminds me a bit of The Expanse, even a bit of Tom's books, the Timberwolf books.
Yep.
I could see a parallel with both of those.
Oh yeah.
That kind of darker universe.
Yeah,
both of those have that kind of similar aspect of darker universe.
That is really amazing. You mentioned that because I've picked up, and you guys have picked up, so much osmosis of the things we've seen over the last 40 years that it's impossible not to have those elements in the things we like and the things that we write about and think about. So that's very true. I think that the Expanse and that the genres
that
themselves,
sort of gritty, sort of dark, gritty feel. It's not the perfect universe, even though there's some technological aspects. That's the way I interpret that. And the thing is, and you saying that as well, Martin, that perhaps I've appreciated it more in recent years because I've watched the director's cut, and I can't really remember the differential between the original cut and the director's cut. So maybe that's why the most recent time I saw it was about 2 or 3 years ago, I actually appreciated it more. So it's possible that's why in subsequent viewings that the way that the director's cut is made is more accessible, at least to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's some purists and stuff.
And I chose for my background today on purpose the Indiana Jones. I mean, this is the Harrison Ford we know from the 80s.
Yes.
And that was like not what people got when they showed up. It was this guy who was somehow, for some reason, he falls in love with that replicant, and they've only met like twice and they have no chemistry. That was strange to me.
I thought that was a bit straight, a bit sort of like it didn't really work for me, the way that he literally was just like love at first sight kind of thing, or whatever.
Yeah, I don't even know why the head of the company introduced him to her. I was like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
What does this have to do with?
They said they want the one version of the film where he come out being a replicant or something, the swans and all that.
Yeah.
Because there was something, I might be wrong, but that's what I remember.
It's the unicorn.
I have to say, I was going to say, I keep thinking about Red Dwarf made an episode based on this as well. Do you remember that episode, Martin? It was the Back to Earth one, where it was back on Logan's Run. Not Logan's Run, on this film. I've gone blank. What's this film called again?
Is that where he's J Bullet or something?
Yeah, it wasn't. It was an episode where, and they had the bit of paper that they twist up, and it was based on Blade Runner.
Yeah, he's coming back. Yeah.
And so it's funny how that aspect was used in another film. But going back to this film, sorry, I'm going a slight tangent here. It is curious how I'd like to know how well it was. I mean, it's a classic, but did it make a lot of money in the States?
No, it failed at the cinemas, and only became much more appreciated later.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like The Thing, where The Thing didn't do very well, but it's now considered a classic. Kind of
yeah.
Yeah.
Although
right.
I was going to say, I have to say I do prefer The Thing to Blade Runner, although I do like Blade Runner.
I think with films like that, because normally when you get space stuff as warp drive and it's all quite colourful in some movies, when Blade Runner come out, I don't think the audience was sort of ready for it because it was this dark and gritty society. Basically, it was today 100 years on or whatever. And
so perhaps... I was going to say,
I don't think people got that. I mean, there is resemblances to Firefly in this world. I know you're watching Firefly now.
I've seen the first 2 or 3 episodes. World. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like I said, I'm finding it. I've only watched the first couple, 2 or 3 episodes. It's all right. I've not really fallen in love with it yet. But then it's only 1 season. But I'll certainly watch them all.
Yeah, I love Firefly. I think it's.
Did you like it? I mean, did you both like that from straight away, or did you take?
I loved it the minute I saw it.
Yeah, I've not got there yet, but I've only seen about 2 or 3. I like all the Stargate actors in it. That's fine. Like George State and
what also strikes me about Blade Runner is it, to me the story was not focused on the right folks, but also it describes the off-world colonies in such a way that
we never saw it though, did we? We didn't
really see it.
I'd like to have seen a bit more of that. That would have been interesting.
I would have loved to have experienced. What is that? Why are they? show me that a little bit, that would have been pretty cool.
Because it was just focused. Was it Los Angeles? What was the city it was based in?
Yeah, it's based in Los Angeles.
So that was the only thing we saw, and so like I said, it would have been interesting. As you just said, it would have been interesting to see what the actual humanity is out in the stars, or colonization. And
I think we might have seen that because there's 4 films that's meant to be set in that universe.
Yeah. What's the other? Soldier?
Yeah, what's that all about?
Soldier, Outland, Aliens, and Prometheus.
Yeah.
Oh.
Rumored. Soldier, there's a police car in the Kurt Russell. Soldier, there's a police car in the junk site. In Aliens, or is it Alien 1? It's the Tyrell Corporation. You see it on a computer screen.
Yeah.
Outland is meant to be, with Sean Connery, is meant to be one of the corporations out on one of the...
So you're saying they're all linked together? Is that what you're saying?
Well, apparently so, yeah. But I mean, yeah, a lot of the fan base is saying, because Outland is set in a very similar environment as Blade Runner.
Oh,
where was Outland set? I forget. It's it's like Saturn or something, right?
I think it could be set. It's one of the moons.
That's the one with
the
Sean Connery, isn't
colony.
it? I've not seen it for years. Yeah, I know
but
the one
it's
you
worth
mean.
taking a look. Apparently, there's something in there that says there's like Easter eggs in these movies, and Prometheus as well. But Tyrell Corporate is mentioned in Aliens or Alien. You see it on the screen.
Okay.
But that, you know what they do? They put Easter eggs in, don't they?
Yes, they do. They're sort of like, it's an in-joke, but then you
But it would be good if it was all connected. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, it could be interesting. I mean, like I said, I'm not sure. I mean, what they've done with the Alien franchise, I'm not so sure about that. But I do kind of, it's interesting. There were sort of like, it was the future of the same civilization as, and of course, androids, of course, are in the Alien films as well. So you could see them as maybe being related in some way. It could be an extension of the fact that, although of course they're persecuted, they're also a bit unstable, which of course Bishop was in the Alien film. I could see that.
I have to say I do agree with Tom though, because he is right about the love story. It was all a bit. I think that's why I
didn't
lost
really
interest
feel.
in the film.
It didn't really click.
There was no
at all.
passion there, was there?
No,
it was just very clinical. I like the opening with the eyeball and that interrogation. You know, when that guy's been with all the eyeball, like the cameras.
You know what's cool, interesting about? I think my big takeaway Blade Runner is that I like the world of Blade Runner than the actual story of Blade Runner. I like the things in it. Like, I like to be there. I like to do other things. I'd like to learn more about it. I like walking around in it, but less so if you think about, the story. I mean, there's some neat stuff in it that's really cool. Like the whole, remember they find that guy, like he makes those toys.
Yes.
And that's how they sneak into.
That was guy.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
That actor, he's in so many sci-fi things.
Yeah,
but,
I know him as well. I know. I just see his face now, but I can't think what he's been in, but I do recognize him. He's one of those.
Yeah, he's a American Southern accent. That was so cool. But overall, I thought for me that this whole, if you looked at it today, if that movie came out today and there had been kind of Blade Runner-esque experiences prior and it wasn't a new genre, people would be like, okay, it was all right. It was fine. It would probably be a 3-star movie.
3 out of 5.
But it wouldn't be a classic per se, because of just the way that the story is just disjointed and focusing on the wrong things. I mean, at least for me, it's not as it's not as amazing as I had remembered it being initially. I'm one of those people that I think every time I've rewatched it a few times, and every time I rewatch it, I have more disappointments and questions in it. Even I've seen the director's cut a couple times now, so it's
funny. I feel
unravel.
I think I feel slightly opposite. That the more I've seen it, I've understood it more. So it's funny how in some ways we're going in opposite directions. It's quite interesting like that. But it's like I said, it's a mixed bag. It's not one of my favorite films of all time, but I recognise it as certainly a sci-fi classic. But I mean, Tom, you did want to sort of go on in a bit about the sequel. Tell me about the perspective of the sequel in relation to the original.
Yeah, so for me, I felt that the sequel really did have a character, a main character that had a great arc. Agent K, I thought that he had it was clear where he was coming from, and I thought that the way they treated him up front, he's definitely a replicant. I like that, that aspect, and him being kind of a blank slate was really neat. Um, and what he begins to unravel actually is meaningful and really, really interesting in that sense.
Yeah.
And what he, eventually finds out was, very, very disappointing. But I felt it really brought him through an arc, and the visuals, the Denis Villeneuve was the perfect choice to direct it. He did an unbelievably good job, and brought forth what kind of worked stylistically about the first movie, and coupled that with a much stronger narrative, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, certainly. I mean, like I said, it's quite a long time in between the two respective films, because I mean, the Blade Runner sequel was only made about 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't that long ago at all. I mean, do you think that there's any further potential in the Blade Runner franchise, i.e., a further sequel or a TV series of some sort? Could that be possible?
I think there's plenty of room in it. Absolutely. I mean, you've got the off-world, you've got what's happening on Earth, you've got the budding potential replicant revolt. So there's tons of stuff different directions they could go in.
You could get 2 more movies out of this.
Absolutely.
Because you've got like the you've got the robot race that turns on humanity, and they can breed now as well. They can have children.
Yeah.
Don't you remember that scene? That's what it was all about, because her he went off with, she had a child, didn't she?
That's right. Yeah.
In the second movie.
But they are are they fully biological? The replicants?
Well, they're not meant to be, but she was like the first of a new kind of. From what I remember of the new film, she was free from all the restrictions. She could live a normal life, but she had a child. Didn't she?
Yeah, I forgot about that. It's interesting.
Yeah, are you talking about the woman who was making the memories?
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was I think really neat, is that she was the hybrid, and that she had the medical problem of not being able to leave that bubble, which I thought was really cool, the way that they treated her.
I found with the second one, they really touched the spirit of the first film, though, even with the music. It was a fantastic sequel. It did flop. I think it flopped actually as well. It didn't do that well.
Yeah, because again, Harrison Ford, he felt like he did sort of phone in his appearance in the sequel. I felt, although it was okay with what he represented, it was more the younger guy as his story. But yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that. Like, I think Harrison Ford, he cares so little about the roles he does now. It's like, I thought that was like his best performance in years.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be like that. He's just there for the money. It's just a paycheck, isn't it? It's just strange that. Maybe that's what I was picking up. But I think you're right, as you said that. I mean, I can't think of a film where he wasn't phoning in his performance in recent years, at least.
Yeah, I think he's getting older. It's just.
There is a TV series on Netflix that says I haven't seen it. It's something called Carbon Copy or something. On Netflix. To say that's very Blade Runner-esque. My friend watches it, and he said it's very Blade Runner in how it's done, like the world and that. I think it's called Cold Carbon or something. Okay. It's about people being downloaded into bodies. I've never seen it, but apparently the trailers I've seen, you do get that Blade Runner vibe from it. So I don't know.
But in the end, these shows, they all do get inspired from other shows. They sort of go around in circles. You can always see a film or a TV show and say, oh, that's had some influences from this or that. I think that's the nature of our genre, really. I mean, you can't help it.
The last film cost about 150 million. I mean, it wasn't a cheap movie.
I thought it did okay, though. I didn't know it flopped, though. I'm surprised it did.
But it never got its money back. But it cost a fortune to make the sequel.
Yeah, it's
really
interesting,
did,
isn't it?
yeah.
It's one of those films where It's just not as successful as perhaps it could have been. But
Well, I saw the sequel at the cinema in Eastbourne, and the person I went with, she was bored stiff. She was, I mean, she was just bored through it. I mean, I was fascinated, but she just sat there and said, she said, "What's going on?" Yeah.
mind you, I was a bit like the first few episodes of The Expanse. It's the same thing with that. I didn't know quite what was going on. Now I've watched it, I've really got into it. But you need some time to sit there and get into that world and get into the vibe of what it's all about, and then you can start to click with it.
Right,
And
but I
that's
think at
definitely
least
the same thing.
I think the Expanse is a different animal because it's exciting, it's kinetic. You know, there's a lot of interesting sci-fi type things going on.
Yeah.
Whereas this movie, it's like very, very cerebral and
Very
at times
slow,
very
and you don't quite know
Yeah.
what's going on, and it's just this moody guy drinking and going in bars, and you know, I remember the first one.
I never really figured out why did I hadn't seen it in a while, but why did he go hide out in New York or something? Like he just disappeared, didn't he, Decker? Didn't he for years? He just like she died and kid got.
I can't remember.
I don't remember. I remember he was like again. I agree with. He was just drinking and feeling sorry for himself in that flat in that abandoned city.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's a strange
and
one,
it
isn't it?
was sort of like, well, what's going on here? I don't know. I think you're right, Tom. With Harrison Ford, I don't think there's any passion going in now. Is there? It's just, I get 20 million for this. I'll do it. Give them what they want, and
I'll
move
get me
on to
dosh.
the next
I'll get me
one.
money.
Yeah.
I'll be able to get that plane and crash it.
Do you,
All right,
do
so,
you,
so go on,
do you
Martin.
think it could be remade with different actors? Do you think it could be like, say, they rebooted it? Do you think they could do it in? I don't know. Do you think if they dropped the old one and decided to redo it, do you think it?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think if they like wanted to make a series and they wanted to find like a guy to be the young Deckard like before he retired, that would be an interesting time to set it.
I like that. I like
Before
that.
he, why before he retired, and then you've got off-world stuff going on, and that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, you could find a young actor to play that.
Yeah, I think they could. Well, I'm surprised it hasn't actually been pursued as a TV series of some sort. But maybe, as you say, if the actual recent version didn't do that well, and the original wasn't, although it's a classic, it's not. It doesn't. If it doesn't bring in the money so much, it might put off the producers of creating.
Well, they could do it. They could do it. Amazon spent 440 million on the Lord of the Rings series.
Yeah.
It's the most. So I mean, Amazon are splashing the cash. It's the most expensive series, but I think it's coming this year.
I'll have to watch that.
million
Yeah,
for a
Yeah.
TV series.
Well, that's pretty.
Yeah,
impressive,
the money that's going into television nowadays is.
Well,
is
we've said it. I mean, there's becoming a blurring now between TV and film. Now often you're watching things, you don't know whether you're watching. I mean, I'm going to talk about that a bit in the news in a second as well about a couple of things. But so to wrap up for me, certainly a good film. It's not one of my favourites of all time, but it's certainly a cult classic. I'm glad I've seen it many times. It's funny, I like it more now, perhaps because I see the director's cut compared to the original. So thumbs up from me. Let's finish off, Martin. What do you think? Same for you?
I think it's for a specific audience because we're like hardcore sci-fiers. I think it's for people like I think we appreciate it, but for like mainstream, I'd think a lot of people probably just switch it off. I'm not like saying bad about, but there's
it's just the nature of the way.
It's not going to get it, It's just how it is. I think it for a certain audience it works.
And finally, Tom, do you agree with that?
I think that it. It's genre defining, but on its own is not as great a movie as everybody remembers.
Yeah, I think I'm like
you're the
agree
opposite.
with that. Yeah, but it's all right. Like I said, it's not one of my friends. I still don't like it as much as I feel like I should have done in the past. But then talking to you both tonight, I think that at least you're kind of understanding to a degree what I'm saying. So at least I'm not quite alone. So thank you guys. Let's go into the news now, and then we're going to have to shoot off quite soon. So let's just go into the jingle and see what, if anything, we've got to talk about this week. So here we go.
Working. Solar Sci-Fi
News.
Right. So news this week. From my perspective, again, there's not a lot going on. We have now had a Star Trek Picard new trailer, which I think was released last week, but obviously it's the first time we recorded. It was a bit of a surprise. First of all, guys, have you both seen it? What do you think of it?
Well, it came out of nowhere, that didn't it? I was sat watching YouTube one night, and it just.
Actually, I sent you the link.
And I thought.
I think I sent you the link.
I think you did. It just came out of nowhere, and I watched it, and I thought, "What's going on here?" I have to say, John Delancey has amazing presence in anything.
Yeah, you can't fault him.
He does. Yeah. And when he said Mon Capitan, it garnered my interest. I quite like the trailer. It looks it looks like they got their act together. I like the scene with Jerry Ryan looking in the mirror, but is she the next?
Borg implant's gone.
Yeah.
Is she a Borg queen? So something happened within the last series. I think there could be potential here. I really do.
I think it might actually have like a Star Trek 4 quality to it, because they seem to be in Los Angeles, present day, to some degree. I don't know if it's going to be a comedy like that was, but that kind of struck me.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek 4 was in San Francisco, but I know what you mean. It was like a contemporary thing. It was more light-hearted. It could be. It could be interesting.
John Delancey he's aged really well. I think he does.
He does.
Yeah.
He actually looks very good. He just looks more distinguished. I mean, obviously,
some joker's gonna say, well, why isn't Q still young and can be whatever? Look how
I reckon you'll see a scene where he's de-aged. I think you will see a scene.
I think there'll be some that, or there'll be some sort of throwaway line where he says, I wanted to age like you did, or some kind of stupid thing, something to
he'll say, I didn't want to make you feel old or something, because of course
something to that effect. I would bet everybody $5 that's the
it looks like there's been some change to the timeline by the looks of it. It looks like, because it looked like Picard at one scene, he was back in Starfleet as a admiral. You saw some of them wearing these new types of Delta, which were bigger and silver and not quite the usual standard ones. I think that's quite an interesting factor. I still really wish they'd get a Federation starship of some sort. I don't like the La Serena or whatever it's called, that red ship they've got. I know it shouldn't matter, but I really do like Star Trek with a Federation starship, even if it's like DS9 with just the Defiant. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's a positive trailer. It's a surprise trailer. We are all very starved for much in the way of news. But I'm still more hyped for the Strange New Worlds, which, from what I understand, they're now filming episode 8 of 10. So they're getting through most of this first season now. So what else do you think about the Starship?
You guys...
info?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, anything else you're going to say there? Go on, what else have you got then?
Nothing else on Star Trek. Nothing else on... I did watch Loki. I'm up to 3.
Yes.
It is so good.
I've not seen. I'm now watching the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the one after the WandaVision.
Yeah.
I've watched the first 2 of those. I've now seen every Marvel film. I've watched all 23, which I thought, Martin, why are you clapping? Why aren't you impressed?
Well, I am gonna do. I was just gonna say
it's astonishment.
When we're gonna have a massive ceremony of medals, like remember Star Wars? Yes, we're gonna have all that. And there's you are now a fully qualified MCU professional.
Well, something like that. Martin, MCU, it sounds like a wrestler. It sounds like a wrestler. You're in the MCU. I just think I don't know why, but I just see myself like in one of those arenas with the bashing. Those not MCU. What do they call it? WWE or whatever it is. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, that's why I keep thinking of wrestling whenever I hear MCU for some reason. Maybe that's why I never got into Marvel in the early years. No, very good films. I wish I'd seen them more in the right order. But I watched the last ones in the order. I watched the second Spider-Man film, Far From Home. I saw the Thor Ragnarok, I think it was, and I saw the second Ant-Man one. Yeah, they're very well. I like the Stan Lee cameos in practically all of the films. I noticed that, which was quite funny. I like the fact that at the end of each film, there's always like the credits come up, then you get a scene, then you get all the credits, then you get another scene at the end. I love all that. It's a good universe.
Well, there's a lot of YouTubers that are panning Loki. They don't like.
I've not seen. I'm gonna see.
I think it's incredible.
They can jump off a cliff. I'm loving it. It's like Doctor Who. It's essentially Doctor Who in the MCU.
I love
Okay.
that TVA. It's totally insane.
TVA. I think I've been to that hotel where they filmed the elevators.
Oh, okay.
I think I've been there. Like those big giant elevators that come down on those 3 statues. I think it's a hotel in New York City.
Well, I'm gonna check out this series next. Let's finish off the Falcon one. The one I've seen is the one where there's another guy who's now Captain America. And I thought, what? So I've seen the second episode where he's now, and whether he's genuine, he strikes me as genuine, but obviously you guys have seen it, so I won't know yet. But I should have seen that by next week, so maybe I can have a bit of a chat about that as well. So yeah, I'm in for the ride, and it's just really, really quite good.
Nice.
What's other news have I seen? Not much. What have you got, Tom?
The Black Widow's coming out next month. It's going to be kind of fun.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I saw you mention that. Yeah, but that's a character I'm not familiar with. That's not something we've seen. Is it the Black Widow?
It's
she's
Scarlett
in the
Johansson in
Avengers.
leather,
She's in the
so it
Avengers.
can't be all bad.
That's the only reason he's watching it.
Have you seen the Suicide Squad 2 trailer yet, Tom?
I did.
I found the new trailer was very good.
I'm one of those rare people that really liked Harley Quinn, like the Birds of Prey film. I thought that was actually pretty good. But for me, whenever I see like a Marvel movie like that is kind of the equivalent of a DC movie that's kind of equivalent to a Marvel movie, it just shows me how one of those series is so much more confident than the other.
So, because you guys are more familiar with the other sort of other, not Marvel, but similar kind of superhero. You're saying that these competitive rival franchises, if that's quite the right term, are the same level as Marvel. Is that what you're both saying? No,
yeah, I don't think they are. I think that the Marvel ones are always done much better, like much more confidently. And are that the Marvel ones are at least going to be pretty good. And this one, you just never know. You never know.
Yeah, interesting. Any other news? I haven't got anything much. I mean, the Star Wars. There's some
nothing.
For me,
discussed the trailers. Unless Tom
my second book is doing really well for reviews.
Oh, cool. I saw that.
Tell us about it. What's happening? Yeah,
the reviews are just keep creeping up.
Excellent.
Almost 4.8 stars out of 5.
That's good. Well
done.
I
mean, maybe at some point soon we'll do. Because obviously we reviewed the first book, but maybe with your permission we'll review the second book.
If you wish.
Yeah.
I think it's I mean that's. It was only my first book was literally my first book, so I think this one is technically better to read and such. And
how about yourself? Are you developing? Because you talked about writing another book. Is that still going on?
Yeah, I'm cranking through book 3. Sort of taking a little summer break to do all my my cycling and other things that I'm doing over the summer. But
I've seen some of those things you've been doing. That looks like it's quite fun, quite energetic. I think probably too energetic to me. But you enjoying that? It's good fun.
Yeah, it is. It exhausts you though. It's like you don't want to go out and ride 65 miles on a bicycle, then come home and write for 3 hours. So I can actually. I can appreciate. I tend to just eat cookies and drink beer when I get home.
Well, why not? All right, guys. Well, I think that's pretty much it from my perspective. Unless there's anything else from you, Martin.
No, I've got no news. There's nothing again. We've discussed it all as far as.
All I know is that the last couple of months, 3 or 4, even 2 or 3 months, there is very minimal news, and I'm sure before that we were throwing things out quite quickly, and it's still like a desert for news. Whether it's Doctor Who, Star Wars, Star Trek, The Orville, all the shows that we like. So, but like I said, we'll keep looking and we'll keep sharing if we can. Okay, guys, let's finish off. I'm going to finish off with a funny song. It's someone has got all of Harrison Ford's screams in the various films over the years and put them into a funny song. I don't know, again, Martin, I'm sorry. I find this weird stuff out there and I have to share it on the podcast. So we'll finish with Harrison Ford. Next week, I thought, if it's okay with you guys, shall we go back to an episode featuring Doctor Who? We haven't done that for a while.
Sure.
Right,
so doctors, I was going to say, we've got doctors to do. We've got 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13. Still got loads. Any of those? Trek Fan 68 wants us to do the 12th Doctor. I know that.
Let's do that.
Capaldi. All right, let's do Peter Capaldi, especially
Oh,
as
yeah,
he
okay.
could ask for that, and everybody. I love that era myself, so that'd be a good one. Okay, guys, we will catch you next week on the Solo One Sci-Fi podcast. Thank you very much.
All right, live long and
See
prosper.
you guys. I'm getting back to work. Bye.
Bye.